Most people never stop to question the path they are walking because questioning it would be too painful. From a young age, they are told exactly what to do: study hard, get a stable job, work for decades, retire someday, and finally enjoy life. It sounds reasonable. It sounds safe. And because it sounds safe, very few ever challenge it. Years pass quickly. Days turn into routines. Dreams are postponed until later. Passions are labeled unrealistic. And slowly, without noticing, life becomes a cycle of waking up tired, working without purpose, and going to bed wondering why fulfillment never arrives. Here is a simple but uncomfortable truth. Effort alone does not guarantee results. Millions of people work hard every single day and still end up with nothing meaningful. No freedom, no peace of mind, no financial security, and no sense of accomplishment. Not because they were lazy, but because they were never taught how to think independently. This video is not meant to criticize hard work. Hard work is honorable, but hard work without direction, without awareness, and without control of the mind often leads to quiet frustration. Napoleon Hill warned about this decades ago. People don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they live on autopilot. Disclaimer: this content is for educational and motivational purposes only. It does not offer financial advice or guarantee results. The goal is to encourage reflection, awareness, and personal growth. If you've ever felt like life is moving forward while you're standing still, this message is for you. Because the most dangerous trap is not poverty, it's spending your entire life believing you're safe, only to realize too late that you were never truly free. And once you see this truth, you can never unsee it. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from right now? And if this message resonates with you, write something in the channel and stay with us until the end. He followed the rules perfectly, woke up early, never missed a day of work, paid his bills on time. People admired his discipline and called him responsible. From the outside, his life looked exactly the way society says it should look: stable, predictable, safe. Inside, however, there was a quiet voice he learned to ignore. Every morning, as he drove the same road to the same place, that voice whispered questions he didn't want to answer. Is this really it? Is this what all these years are for? He told himself it was just fatigue, just stress, just a phase. After all, quitting or changing paths felt risky, and risk was something he was trained to avoid. So he stayed. Years passed. Promotions came, but fulfillment didn't. His income increased, but his freedom didn't. His calendar filled up, yet his life felt strangely empty. And without realizing it, he made a silent trade. He exchanged his dreams for comfort and called it maturity. Napoleon Hill explained that most people never fail loudly. They fail quietly, by conforming, by waiting, by believing that time alone will reward them. The tragedy is not that they work too little, but that they think too little. They follow paths designed by others and assume effort will somehow compensate for lack of vision. Then one day, close to retirement, reality arrives without warning. And in that moment, a terrifying question finally demands an answer, one he can no longer avoid. What if the real mistake was not working too hard, but never questioning where all that work was leading? That question doesn't come gently. It arrives late, usually when the noise of life finally quiets down, when the children are grown, when the routine no longer distracts, when the mirror reflects someone older than expected. It is then that many realize they followed a script without ever reading the fine print. Napoleon Hill called this condition drifting. Not drifting because of laziness, but drifting because of unconsciousness. A drifter is someone who allows circumstances, habits, and the opinions of others to decide the direction of their life. They wake up each day reacting instead of creating, and over decades, that reaction becomes a destiny. Most people never choose their beliefs, they inherit them. Be realistic. Play it safe. Don't risk what you already have. These ideas sound wise, but they quietly shape behavior. They train the mind to seek security over growth, approval over purpose, and once these beliefs take root, they operate silently, guiding decisions without being questioned. The tragedy is that society rewards this behavior in the short term. The drifter is praised for stability, for obedience, for consistency. Paychecks arrive, bills are paid. Life looks fine from the outside, but internally something erodes. Initiative, imagination, and the belief that one's life truly belongs to them. Hill observed that people often confuse motion with progress. They are busy, exhausted, always working on something, yet moving in circles. Activity becomes a substitute for direction, and because they are tired, they assume they are productive. Because they are loyal, they assume they are advancing. But loyalty to the wrong path only guarantees a more permanent version of the same dissatisfaction. Fear plays a central role in this pattern. Fear of criticism, fear of failure, fear of starting over, fear of standing out. These fears don't usually shout, they whisper. They say, "Wait a little longer, now is not the right time. Others have it worse. Be grateful for what you have." Over time, fear dresses itself as logic. Years go by, and what once felt temporary becomes permanent. The job becomes the identity. The routine becomes the comfort zone. Dreams are reduced to memories, then eventually to stories told with a half smile. "I once thought about doing something else." Napoleon Hill warned that the mind is either controlled or it controls. There is no neutral state. If you don't actively direct your thoughts, someone else will, an employer, a culture, a system that benefits from predictability. And predictability, while efficient, rarely leads to fulfillment. Many people believe retirement will solve everything. That freedom is waiting at the end of the road, but Hill argued that postponing happiness is one of the greatest illusions. Because if a person does not learn how to think independently while working, they will not suddenly discover freedom when the work ends. They simply carry the same mindset into a new phase of life. This is why so many reach 65 with a strange emptiness. They have time but no purpose, experience but no legacy, memories of effort but little meaning attached to them. The realization is painful. They spent their best years building someone else's dream, hoping loyalty alone would someday be rewarded. The most dangerous moment is not when this realization appears, but when it is quickly suppressed. Some numb it with distractions, others blame the economy, bad luck, or circumstances. Very few have the courage to ask the deeper question, what patterns did I accept without questioning? Hill believed that awareness is the beginning of all transformation. The moment someone recognizes they have been drifting, they are no longer fully asleep. But awakening brings discomfort. It forces responsibility. It demands change, and change is precisely what most were trained to avoid. Yet, there is a quiet truth hidden beneath the discomfort. The same mind that accepted limitation can learn to reject it. The same habits that produced stagnation can be replaced. The same years that feel wasted can become teachers instead of regrets. But this shift does not happen automatically. It requires something most people were never taught: definiteness of purpose, not vague wishes, not distant hopes. A clear decision about what kind of life is worth living, even if it disrupts comfort. And this is where the story begins to divide people into two paths. Some, when faced with this truth, retreat back into routine. They tell themselves it's too late. That change is for the young. That questioning now would only bring regret. So they choose familiarity over freedom and call it peace. Others, however, make a different choice. They decide that the cost of staying asleep is greater than the risk of waking up. And once that decision is made, nothing ever feels the same again. Because the next step is not about working harder, it's about thinking differently. And that is where the real battle begins. Thinking differently sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest disciplines a human being can master. Most people assume thoughts just happen, that the mind is something to react to rather than command. Napoleon Hill taught the opposite. The mind is a tool, and like any tool, it must be trained, or it will be used against its owner. This is where many turn back. The moment someone begins to question old beliefs, discomfort appears. Friends don't understand. Family warns them to be careful. Society subtly pushes back, not aggressively but persistently. The message is always the same: stay where you are, don't disrupt the balance. And because humans are wired to seek belonging, many retreat to what feels familiar. Hill emphasized that definiteness of purpose is the dividing line between those who drift and those who direct their lives. Without a clear purpose, effort scatters, energy leaks. Time disappears. A person may work endlessly, but without a destination, all roads lead nowhere. Purpose is not about knowing every step, it's about knowing the direction. Yet most people were never encouraged to define it. They were taught how to obey schedules, not how to design a life. How to meet expectations, not how to question them. As a result, when asked what they truly want, many feel an unsettling emptiness. Fear rushes in to fill that void. Fear says, "What if you choose wrong?" Fear says, "What if you fail publicly?" Fear says, "What if you lose what little stability you have?" So instead of choosing boldly, people choose safely, and safety, when it becomes a lifestyle, slowly suffocates growth. Napoleon Hill observed that the mind feeds on repetition. Whatever thoughts are allowed to dominate will eventually harden into beliefs. If a person repeats thoughts of limitation, doubt, and dependence, those ideas become their reality. Not because the world demands it, but because the mind accepts it. This is why many intelligent, capable people never escape mediocrity. Their problem is not lack of talent, but lack of mental discipline. They let external circumstances dictate internal decisions. And once that pattern is established, years pass quickly. Another illusion Hill exposed is the belief that opportunity appears only once conditions are perfect. People wait for the right timing, more confidence, more savings, more approval. But perfect conditions never arrive. Waiting becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a lifetime. Those who break free understand something crucial. Clarity comes after commitment, not before. Confidence is built through action, not contemplation. And the mind, once given a clear command, begins to reorganize reality around that command. This is where the internal struggle intensifies, because once a person commits to a purpose, distractions increase. Doubts resurface louder than before. Old fears demand attention. This is the test Hill described, the moment when desire must overpower habit. Most people fail here. They interpret resistance as a sign to stop, rather than a sign that change is working. They mistake uncertainty for danger, and slowly they return to the comfort of the known, telling themselves they tried. But those who persist experience something rare. They begin to notice that their thoughts shift. They stop reacting and start choosing. They recognize patterns they once obeyed unconsciously. And for the first time, they feel ownership over their decisions. This does not mean immediate success. It means internal alignment. And alignment is far more powerful than motivation, because it doesn't depend on mood, it depends on identity. Hill believed that when identity changes, behavior follows naturally. A person no longer asks, "Can I do this?" They ask, "Who am I becoming by doing this?" And that question changes everything. Because the real transformation is not financial, it's psychological. Wealth, freedom, and fulfillment are outcomes of a mind that refuses to drift. Yet even at this stage, a final obstacle remains, one that stops more people than fear itself. It is the belief that the past defines the future, and until that belief is shattered, true freedom remains just out of reach. By the time most people reach midlife, something subtle but powerful has settled in, their self-image. It is no longer just an idea of who they are, it feels like a fact. I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. I'm too old to start over. This is just how life turned out. These statements don't feel like beliefs anymore, they feel like reality. Napoleon Hill understood this better than most. People do not act according to their potential, they act according to their identity. And identity, once formed, becomes a prison more convincing than any external limitation. The past plays a dangerous role here. Failures are remembered more vividly than attempts. Missed opportunities feel heavier than lessons learned. And over time, the mind begins to use history as evidence. You tried before. It didn't work. Why would now be any different? What most people never realize is that the past has no power on its own. It only has the power the mind gives it. Hill warned that the greatest enemy of success is not failure, but the habit of interpreting failure as final. Many people unknowingly build their lives around avoiding emotional pain. They choose predictability over possibility because disappointment once hurt too much. So they lower expectations, shrink desires, and call it wisdom. But deep down, there is a quiet resentment, not toward others, but toward themselves. This is why so many people feel tired, even when they are not physically exhausted. Carrying an unlived life is heavy. Suppressing ambition requires energy. Pretending contentment drains the spirit more than honest struggle ever could. Hill taught that the subconscious mind accepts whatever the conscious mind repeatedly feeds it, without argument. If someone constantly reminds themselves of what went wrong, of what they lack, of why it's too late, the subconscious takes those ideas as instructions, and slowly, behavior aligns with those instructions. Opportunities are ignored, ideas are dismissed before they are explored. Possibilities are rejected before they are examined, not because they aren't viable, but because they don't match the person's self-image. This is the invisible ceiling few ever break through. Those who do experience a profound internal shift. They stop asking permission from their past. They stop negotiating with old fears. They begin to see their history not as a verdict, but as data, information, not identity. Hill emphasized that decision is the turning point of all achievement, not a wish, not a hope. A decision so firm that it reorganizes priorities and silences excuses. This kind of decision doesn't come from confidence, it creates confidence. But making such a decision feels dangerous at first, because it threatens the familiar story. It challenges the role the person has been playing for years, and roles, even limiting ones, feel safe when they are familiar. This is where many retreat again. They sense that real change would require more than external adjustments. It would demand a new self-concept, a new standard, a new relationship with responsibility. And responsibility is uncomfortable because it removes the option to blame. Hill believed that personal power begins the moment someone accepts full responsibility for their outcomes, not with guilt, but with clarity. Responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means everything is within your influence. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means no one is coming to rescue you. Liberating because it means no one is required to give you permission. Those who embrace this truth stop waiting for motivation. They understand that action creates motivation, not the other way around. They move even when unsure. They think even when afraid. And slowly, their internal dialogue changes. Instead of asking, what if I fail? They ask, what if I succeed and never forgive myself for waiting? Instead of saying, I can't, they ask, what would someone who could do this think and do right now? This shift does not erase fear, but it places fear in its proper position, no longer as a ruler, but as a signal, a sign that growth is near. Hill noted that when a person's desire becomes stronger than their fear, the mind begins to cooperate instead of resist. Ideas emerge, resources appear, coincidences align, not magically but logically, as attention sharpens and awareness expands. Yet even here, a final illusion remains, one that stops many, just as momentum begins to build. The illusion that success is something external to be achieved, rather than an internal state to be embodied. Until this illusion is broken, progress will always feel fragile, and the moment it breaks, everything accelerates. Because what comes next is not about effort, discipline, or strategy. It is about alignment, and alignment changes the rules entirely. Alignment is the moment when a person's thoughts, decisions, and actions stop pulling in different directions. For most of their lives, people live divided. They want one thing, fear another, and act according to what feels safest in the moment. This internal conflict drains energy and creates the illusion that life is harder than it truly is. Napoleon Hill believed that when alignment is achieved, effort feels lighter, not because the work disappears, but because resistance does. The mind no longer argues with itself, doubt loses its authority, and clarity replaces confusion. This is why some people seem to move forward with calm certainty, even in uncertainty. They are not more talented. They are not luckier. They are aligned. Their actions are no longer attempts to escape fear, but expressions of purpose. At this stage, something unexpected happens. Discipline becomes natural. What once required willpower now feels obvious. Habits begin to reorganize themselves around the new identity. Time is used differently. Attention becomes more focused, and distractions that once felt irresistible lose their grip. Hill described this as the mind entering a cooperative state. Instead of fighting old patterns, the subconscious begins to support the new direction. Ideas surface spontaneously. Solutions appear where problems once seemed permanent, not because reality has changed, but because perception has. However, alignment also brings a new responsibility. When excuses no longer feel honest, avoidance becomes uncomfortable. A person can no longer blame circumstances, timing, or others without feeling internal resistance. And this is where growth deepens or collapses. Many people sabotage themselves at this stage, not because they lack ability, but because alignment demands consistency. It removes the emotional shelter of confusion, and clarity can feel exposed. Hill warned that persistence is the final separator between intention and outcome. Desire initiates change, faith sustains it. But persistence is what carries it through moments of silence, when results are not yet visible. This is the phase where external validation disappears. The world has not caught up yet. Progress is internal, and without immediate feedback, old doubts attempt to return. Was this really the right path? Why hasn't anything changed yet? What if I was wrong all along? Those who succeed do not eliminate these thoughts. They refuse to obey them. They understand that alignment does not mean certainty of outcome. It means certainty of direction. And direction, once chosen, must be protected. Hill emphasized that faith is not blind belief. It is disciplined imagination. It is the ability to hold a mental image of the desired outcome long enough for behavior to align with it, and behavior, repeated consistently, eventually produces evidence. This is where many finally notice a shift in their external reality. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear. Conversations lead somewhere. Decisions feel cleaner. Even setbacks are processed differently, not as signs to quit, but as feedback to adjust. The person is no longer chasing success. They are becoming someone for whom success is a natural consequence. This transformation does not always look dramatic. In fact, it often looks quiet, subtle, ordinary. But internally, it is revolutionary. The individual is no longer reacting to life. They are participating in it consciously. Hill believed this is the point where most people, if they continue, never return to drifting. Because the contrast is too clear. They have tasted internal order, and chaos no longer feels acceptable. Yet one final test remains, the test of patience. Because alignment creates momentum, but momentum must be sustained, and impatience, if unchecked, can unravel everything. People begin to rush, to force outcomes, to compare timelines, to doubt the process that brought them this far. And Hill was clear. Impatience is often disguised fear. Fear that time is running out, fear that others are ahead, fear that progress is too slow to matter. Those who pass this test learn to trust consistency over urgency. They remain focused without becoming desperate. They continue acting in alignment even when nothing seems to be happening. And then, often suddenly, results begin to compound. Not in small ways, but in undeniable ones. This is the moment outsiders call luck, but those inside know better, because they understand that what appears sudden was built quietly, day by day, thought by thought, decision by decision. Still, there is one final realization that completes the transformation, a realization that determines whether this change becomes permanent or temporary, and that realization will define the final outcome of the journey. The final realization does not arrive with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, almost gently, but it changes everything. The understanding is simple, yet confronting. Life does not reward time served. It rewards awareness applied. Napoleon Hill warned that many people confuse longevity with progress. They believe that years alone justify outcomes, that loyalty to a routine deserves security. But the truth is harsher and more freeing at the same time. Time does not create value unless it is guided by intention. This is why so many people reach 65 exhausted, disappointed, and confused. They gave decades of effort, but never claimed ownership of direction. They worked faithfully but thought passively. And thinking, Hill argued, is the highest form of work there is. The difference between those who end up with nothing and those who build something meaningful is not intelligence, luck, or background. It is the moment they stop outsourcing their thinking, the moment they stop asking, "What is expected of me?" and start asking, "What do I choose?" When that shift occurs, life reorganizes itself. Work becomes a tool instead of a trap. Money becomes a consequence instead of a pursuit. And success stops being something chased in the future and becomes something built in the present. Hill emphasized that freedom is not granted by institutions, employers, or circumstances. It is granted internally when a person decides to think deliberately instead of habitually. This decision cannot be postponed. Waiting for the right time is simply another form of drifting. Those who break the cycle do not necessarily quit their jobs or abandon responsibility. They redefine their relationship with work. They stop trading time for survival and start using time for creation. They stop measuring life by years worked and start measuring it by impact made. This is where regret dissolves. Not because mistakes disappear, but because meaning replaces them. The past becomes instruction instead of accusation. Experience becomes leverage instead of weight. And the future becomes something actively shaped, not anxiously awaited. Hill believed that the greatest tragedy is not failure, but success at the wrong thing. A life perfectly executed in the wrong direction still ends in emptiness, but a life consciously redirected, even late, regains its power. The truth is uncomfortable but liberating. No one ends up with nothing by accident, and no one builds something meaningful by chance. Both outcomes are the result of consistent thinking, repeated daily over years. The good news is this: the same principle that creates emptiness can create fulfillment. The same discipline that built routine can build purpose. The same mind that once drifted can learn to lead. And once a person truly understands this, age loses its authority. Time stops being an enemy. The question is no longer how much time is left, but how intentionally will I use what remains. This is the moment when the cycle breaks, not at retirement, not at 65. But the instant awareness replaces autopilot. Because in the end, life does not ask how long you worked, it asks how deeply you thought. And those who answer that question honestly never end up with nothing again. The final realization does not arrive with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, almost gently, but it changes everything. The understanding is simple, yet confronting. Life does not reward time served. It rewards awareness applied. Napoleon Hill warned that many people confuse longevity with progress. They believe that years alone justify outcomes, that loyalty to a routine deserves security. But the truth is harsher and more freeing at the same time. Time does not create value unless it is guided by intention. This is why so many people reach 65 exhausted, disappointed, and confused. They gave decades of effort, but never claimed ownership of direction. They worked faithfully, but thought passively. And thinking, Hill argued, is the highest form of work there is. The difference between those who end up with nothing and those who build something meaningful is not intelligence, luck, or background. It is the moment they stop outsourcing their thinking. The moment they stop asking, "What is expected of me?" and start asking, "What do I choose?" When that shift occurs, life reorganizes itself. Work becomes a tool instead of a trap. Money becomes a consequence instead of a pursuit. And success stops being something chased in the future and becomes something built in the present. Hill emphasized that freedom is not granted by institutions, employers, or circumstances. It is granted internally, when a person decides to think deliberately instead of habitually. This decision cannot be postponed. Waiting for the right time is simply another form of drifting. Those who break the cycle do not necessarily quit their jobs or abandon responsibility. They redefine their relationship with work. They stop trading time for survival and start using time for creation. They stop measuring life by years worked and start measuring it by impact made. This is where regret dissolves, not because mistakes disappear, but because meaning replaces them. The past becomes instruction instead of accusation. Experience becomes leverage instead of weight. And the future becomes something actively shaped, not anxiously awaited. Hill believed that the greatest tragedy is not failure, but success at the wrong thing. A life perfectly executed in the wrong direction still ends in emptiness. But a life consciously redirected, even late, regains its power. The truth is uncomfortable but liberating. No one ends up with nothing by accident, and no one builds something meaningful by chance. Both outcomes are the result of consistent thinking, repeated daily over years. The good news is this: the same principle that creates emptiness can create fulfillment. The same discipline that built routine can build purpose. The same mind that once drifted can learn to lead. And once a person truly understands this, age loses its authority. Time stops being an enemy. The question is no longer how much time is left, but how intentionally will I use what remains. This is the moment when the cycle breaks. Not at retirement, not at 65, but the instant awareness replaces autopilot. Because in the end, life does not ask how long you worked, it asks how deeply you thought. And those who answer that question honestly never end up with nothing again. What most people never realize is that purpose does not end with personal success. Once a person stops drifting and starts directing their life, a new responsibility emerges, the responsibility of impact. Not impact measured only by money, but by meaning. Napoleon Hill believed that true wealth expresses itself through usefulness. When someone aligns their work with a clear purpose, their efforts naturally extend beyond survival. Work becomes a channel through which value flows outward, and this shift changes everything. Those who reach this stage no longer ask, "How much can I get?" They begin to ask, "How much can I contribute?" This question transforms motivation, energy increases, creativity expands, and fulfillment deepens, because the individual is no longer isolated within personal ambition. Legacy is not about being remembered by millions. It is about leaving something better than you found it: ideas, systems, opportunities, or even a mindset passed on to others. Many who worked until 65 and ended with nothing failed not because they lacked effort, but because their work was disconnected from contribution. Hill emphasized that the human mind thrives when it knows its actions matter beyond itself. Without that awareness, yes, even success feels empty. With it, even simple work feels meaningful. At this level, fear of failure loses its grip. When purpose is rooted in service, mistakes become part of refinement rather than threats to identity. The person understands that growth is not linear and that setbacks are signals, not verdicts. This is where time regains its value. Days are no longer something to get through, but something to invest. Choices are made with intention, and the future is approached with calm responsibility instead of anxious hope. Yet even here, another subtle danger appears: the temptation to measure worth by outcomes again, to attach identity to results instead of alignment. Hill warned that this attachment can quietly recreate the same trap in a new form. Those who remain free understand that purpose is not a destination. It is a practice, something lived daily, adjusted consciously, and protected intentionally. And this understanding prepares the mind for the final transformation. Because beyond purpose and impact lies something even deeper: freedom. Freedom is not the absence of work. It is the absence of internal compulsion. It is the ability to choose one's actions without being driven by fear, approval, or unconscious habit. Napoleon Hill described freedom as mental sovereignty, the state in which a person governs their own thoughts rather than being governed by them. This is the ultimate escape from the cycle that traps so many into working their entire lives and ending with nothing. Those who reach this state do not escape responsibility. They embrace it fully. But they do so from clarity, not obligation, from intention, not pressure. Time becomes a partner instead of a threat. Money becomes a tool instead of a master. And success becomes an expression of alignment rather than a measure of worth. These individuals understand something crucial. Life does not improve because circumstances change. Circumstances change because thinking changes. This is why no system, no employer, no government can grant real freedom. It must be claimed internally first. Without that claim, external changes only rearrange the same limitations. Hill believed that the greatest victory is not financial independence, but independence of thought. A person who controls their thinking can rebuild anything: career, finances, identity, direction, at any stage of life. And this is why age loses its power. 65 is not an ending unless the mind has already surrendered. For those who remain conscious, every year becomes raw material for creation. The tragedy, then, is not working until 65. The tragedy is never waking up, but the invitation remains open. Always. The moment awareness replaces autopilot, the cycle breaks. And when the cycle breaks, life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you actively shape. That is the difference between ending with nothing and ending with meaning. Most people believe that once awareness arrives, the struggle ends. But Napoleon Hill understood something deeper. Awakening does not remove resistance. It reveals it. The moment a person becomes conscious of their own thinking, life begins to test that consciousness. Old patterns do not disappear quietly. They resurface with urgency. Habits built over decades demand loyalty. Comfort calls louder than purpose. And the world, sensing the shift, begins to apply subtle pressure to restore the old order. This is the stage where many confuse awareness with mastery. They see clearly, but they still hesitate. They understand the trap, but they remain emotionally attached to it. Hill warned that knowledge alone does not transform, only applied discipline does. Without discipline, awareness becomes frustration. The mind, once awakened, becomes sensitive. What was once tolerable now feels unbearable. Empty conversations drain energy. Meaningless routines feel heavy. And the gap between who the person is and who they know they could be becomes impossible to ignore. This gap is painful. It creates restlessness. It disrupts sleep. It demands action. And action, once again, requires courage. Hill described this phase as the refining fire. Not everyone passes through it successfully. Some retreat back into distraction, numbing the discomfort with entertainment, consumption, or constant busyness. They tell themselves they are aware enough, even as they slowly fall back into drifting. Others lean into the discomfort. They accept that growth feels unstable before it feels natural. They stop expecting certainty and start practicing commitment. Not commitment to outcomes, but commitment to alignment. At this stage, discipline takes on a new meaning. It is no longer about forcing behavior. It is about protecting attention, about choosing what enters the mind and what is rejected, about recognizing that every thought repeated is a vote for the person one is becoming. Hill emphasized that the mind is shaped by its dominant influences. Environment matters. Associations matter. Information matters. Those who continue forward begin to curate their mental environment with intention. They become selective. Selective with conversations. Selective with media. Selective with obligations. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. This selectivity creates space. And in that space, clarity deepens. Decisions become cleaner. Emotional reactions soften. The individual begins to respond rather than react. Something remarkable happens here. The mind starts to trust itself. Doubt loses intensity because decisions are no longer impulsive. Confidence grows not from success, but from consistency. The person begins to rely on their own judgment rather than external validation. Hill believed this was the foundation of self-mastery. Yet, just as stability begins to form, another challenge appears, one that has ended more journeys than failure ever has. Success, small wins, recognition, momentum. These are dangerous if misunderstood. Success tempts the ego to reclaim control. It whispers, "You've arrived. Relax now. You've earned comfort." And if listened to, it quietly reintroduces complacency. Those who fall here stop growing while believing they are progressing. They confuse motion with evolution once again, just at a higher level. But those who remain conscious understand that growth is not linear and mastery is not permanent. They continue questioning, they continue refining, they continue aligning, and by doing so, they reach a level few ever experience, a level where effort and intuition begin to merge, where decisions feel guided rather than forced, where life feels coherent. Yet even this is not the final stage, because mastery of self eventually leads to a deeper question, one that goes beyond personal fulfillment, a question about responsibility. And the answer to that question determines whether everything built so far becomes a legacy, or simply a personal achievement. Responsibility is often misunderstood as burden, but Napoleon Hill defined it differently. To him, responsibility was the natural consequence of awareness. Once a person knows better, they are accountable, not to society but to their own potential. At this stage, the individual realizes something profound. Personal freedom creates influence. Whether intended or not, others observe. Energy communicates. Behavior teaches. The question becomes unavoidable. What am I modeling? Hill believed that every individual contributes to the collective mindset of their environment. Drifters multiply drifting. Conscious thinkers awaken others, sometimes without a word. This realization reframes success entirely. Achievement is no longer about accumulation, it is about example, about demonstrating what is possible when thought is disciplined and intention is clear. Those who reach this level no longer ask how to escape systems, they ask how to elevate them. They understand that true impact is quiet, consistent, and grounded. Their work becomes cleaner, their communication simpler, their presence steadier. They do not need to convince, they embody. Hill often wrote that leadership is not position, but influence earned through self-mastery. And influence, once earned, carries ethical weight. This is where many face their deepest internal reckoning. Am I using my clarity to serve ego or truth? Am I building something that outlives me or just protects me? The answers are not intellectual. They are revealed through behavior. Those who choose ego begin to contract. Fear returns in new forms. Fear of losing status, relevance, control. They become rigid, defensive, protective. Those who choose truth expand. They accept uncertainty. They invest in others. They release attachment to recognition, and paradoxically, their impact grows. Hill emphasized that wealth without contribution is spiritual poverty. And contribution without awareness is sacrifice without meaning. The balance lies in conscious service. At this level, time feels different. Urgency dissolves. Patience strengthens. The individual is no longer racing against life, but cooperating with it. They understand that nothing meaningful is rushed, and nothing aligned is wasted. This is the point where the fear of ending with nothing disappears entirely, because nothing was never about money. It was about emptiness, and emptiness cannot exist where purpose, awareness, and responsibility are integrated. Those who reach this state do not fear age, endings, or transitions. They understand that life unfolds in seasons, and each season has its own form of contribution. Napoleon Hill's warning now feels complete. People who work until 65 and end up with nothing did not fail financially. They failed to wake up. But those who wake up at any age never end with nothing. They end with understanding, and understanding, once embodied, becomes the only form of wealth that cannot be lost. In the end, the message is not about work, age, or even money. It is about awareness, about the moment a person realizes that life is not something to endure, but something to direct. Napoleon Hill never warned against effort. He warned against unconscious effort, against giving decades of energy to paths chosen by habit, fear, or expectation rather than intention. This is why so many reach the later years of life feeling empty, not because they lacked discipline, but because they lacked direction. The greatest illusion society teaches is that safety equals fulfillment, that obedience guarantees security, that time alone will reward loyalty. But time is neutral. It amplifies whatever thinking dominates it. When thinking is passive, time multiplies regret. When thinking is deliberate, time multiplies meaning. No one truly ends up with nothing by accident. They end up there by slowly surrendering their ability to choose, by postponing reflection, by avoiding discomfort, by allowing routines to replace purpose. But the opposite is also true. No one builds a meaningful life in a single decision. It is built through small, repeated acts of awareness, through choosing clarity over comfort, through asking better questions, through refusing to drift even when drifting feels easier. The most powerful truth in Hill's philosophy is this: the moment you take control of your thinking, you take control of your direction. Circumstances may resist, fear may speak, doubt may appear, but none of them can dominate a disciplined mind. Age does not disqualify awareness. Experience does not imprison potential. And the past does not define the future unless it is allowed to. The cycle breaks the instant autopilot is replaced by intention. From that moment forward, work changes meaning, time changes value, and life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you participate in consciously. This is why the real tragedy is not working until 65. The tragedy is never questioning why. And the real success is not retiring with money. It is arriving at the end of life with clarity, peace, and the quiet confidence that your time was used deliberately. If this message resonated with you, it is not by chance. Awareness recognizes itself. And the moment you recognize it, you are no longer drifting. You are choosing. And that choice changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring content like this. See you tomorrow.